Maya Chen stared at the holographic display floating above her workstation, watching alien design scroll past in brilliant blue light. Around her, the advanced weapons engineering classroom buzzed with the excited chatter of 24 students from across the Galactic Federation. Most were tall, imposing figures from warrior species, Carathian battlehawks with their razor-sharp beaks, Vuldran shock troopers whose muscled arms could crush steel, and Nexari tacticians whose four eyes could track multiple targets simultaneously. Then, there was Maya, barely 5 feet tall, representing humanity in a class where she was quite literally the smallest person in the room. Today's assignment is simple, announced Instructor Vexhai, his serpentine form coiling around the central platform. The Sethrak's yellow eyes gleamed as they swept across the classroom. You have 4 standard galactic hours to design and construct a functional weapon capable of neutralizing my training drones. These drones are equipped with adaptive shielding technology and evasion protocols. Only precision, innovation, and raw power will succeed. Maya watched as her classmates immediately began accessing the weapons database. Energy projectors, plasma cannons, gravitational disruptors, the most advanced weapons technology the galaxy had to offer. She could see the confidence in their movements. After all, they came from civilizations that had been perfecting warfare for millennia before humanity even discovered fire. She pulled up her own interface and began scrolling through the available materials and fabrication tools. Standard combat protocols suggested energy-based weapons for shield penetration. The Carathians were already designing microfusion warheads. The Vuldran team was constructing a massive kinetic accelerator that would require 3 of them to operate. Maya leaned back in her chair and thought about home. Earth. Specifically, the summer she'd spent with her grandfather in the mountains of Colorado, learning skills that most humans had forgotten in their rush toward technological advancement. Strange choice for a human, observed her lab partner, a Nexari named Keflon. His primary eyes focused on her screen while his secondary pair continued monitoring the instructor. Your people are known for their technological adaptability. Why are you not accessing the energy weapon systems? Just thinking, Maya replied, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls. Instead of weapons systems, she was pulling up material composition analyses. Wood analogs. Tensile strength measurements. Flexibility coefficients. Keflon's 4 eyes now all focused on her screen. These are structural materials. For construction, not weapons. Sometimes the old ways are better than the new ways, Maya said quietly, beginning her first fabrication request. The classroom's central fabricator hummed to life as students began creating their weapons. Massive energy requirements lit up the power grid as plasma forges and antimatter containment units came online. Maya waited patiently as her own request processed a simple rectangular block of laminated wood analog, measures precisely calculated from memory. Instructor Vexhai slithered past her workstation, pausing to examine her screen. Miss Chen, I see no weapon specifications in your design queue. I'm working on it, sir. The instructor's forked tongue flicked out, tasting the air. Perhaps you require assistance accessing the weapons database? I understand human technology is somewhat primitive compared to what is available here. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks, but kept her voice level. Thank you, sir. I think I've got what I need. Vexhai's laugh was a sound like grinding glass. Very well. But, remember, this exercise is graded on effectiveness, not creativity. The Federation has little use for quaint human innovations. As the instructor moved on, Keflon leaned closer. He seeks to intimidate you. Vexhai believes humans are weak because you lack natural weapons and are physically small compared to most Federation species. What do you think? Maya asked, beginning to shape her material with careful precision. I think, Keflon said slowly, that any species capable of achieving faster-than-light travel starting from basic chemical combustion in less than a century should not be underestimated. Maya smiled at that. It was the first genuinely kind thing anyone had said to her since arriving at the academy 3 months ago. Most students and instructors seem to view humanity as the Federation's charity case, a primitive species granted membership more for their potential than their current capabilities. She began the delicate work of shaping her wood analog, using the precision tools to carve and bend the material according to specifications she'd memorized years ago. Around her, the sound of advanced manufacturing filled the air. Particle beam alignments, antimatter stabilization, gravitational field generators spinning up to operational capacity. Maya worked with hand tools, shaping her material one careful cut at a time. 2 hours into the assignment, most students were beginning final assembly of their weapons. The Korathians had constructed what appeared to be a miniature sun contained in a crystalline matrix. The Vuldran team's kinetic accelerator stretched across 3 workstations and hummed with barely contained power. Maya had a piece of curved wood and a collection of smaller components she'd fabricated quietly while others focused on their own projects. "What manner of weapon is this?" asked Zarkos, a Korathian whose red-feathered crest marked him as a noble from the Warbird clans. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, his raptor-like head tilted in confusion as he examined Maya's work. "You'll see," Maya replied, testing the flexibility of her creation with gentle pressure. "It appears to be decorative. Perhaps humans have a different understanding of what constitutes a weapon?" Several other students had gathered now, drawn by curiosity. Maya continued her work, ignoring their whispered comments. She attached her carefully crafted string synthetic material with precisely calculated tension characteristics and tested the pull weight. "Is that string?" asked Velnora, a Vuldran whose purple skin showed the ritual scars of 100 honor duels. "Are you constructing some form of restraining device?" "Something like that," Maya said, reaching for the final components she'd been fabricating: long, straight shafts with pointed tips and stabilizing vanes. Recognition dawned on Keflon's face first. "Projectile weapons. You're creating a projectile delivery system." "A bow," Maya corrected, standing to test the weight and balance. "It's called a bow." The gathered students stared in confusion. Zarkos tilted his head further, his predator instincts clearly struggling with the concept. "You launch small spears with tension? This is your weapon?" "One of humanity's oldest," Maya confirmed, knocking an arrow and testing the draw. "But the drones have adaptive shielding," Velnora pointed out. "Energy weapons can barely penetrate their defenses. How will primitive projectiles succeed where advanced technology fails?" Maya smiled. "Sometimes the best way to deal with something advanced is to use something so simple it doesn't know how to defend against it." Instructor Vexhai's voice echoed through the classroom. "Attention, students. Testing will begin momentarily. Please ensure your weapons are fully operational and safety protocols are engaged." Maya looked down at her bow. "No energy signature to detect. No electromagnetic emissions to track. No quantum resonance patterns to analyze. Just wood, string, and sharp-pointed arrows guided by human skill and thousands of years of evolutionary hunting instinct." The other students returned to their stations, still muttering about the strange human and her primitive weapon. Maya remained calm, running through mental calculations her grandfather had taught her. Wind resistance in the artificial atmosphere. Gravitational constant on the station. Target tracking and leading calculations. The training chamber's blast doors opened with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a space roughly the size of a football field. Hover platforms rose from the floor, positioning students at various points around the chamber's perimeter. In the center, a single pillar extended upward, and, from its apex, Instructor Vexhai's training drone materialized. The drone was beautiful in its mechanical perfection. Roughly spherical, about 3 feet in diameter, its surface shifted and flowed like liquid metal. Energy shields flickered around it in barely visible distortions, and its movement patterns defied traditional physics as it began a complex dance through 3-dimensional space. "The drone's adaptive shielding will learn from each attack," Vexhai announced, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "It begins with basic defensive parameters but will adjust to counter whatever weapons you employ. Additionally, it is armed with non-lethal suppression systems. Miss your target, and it will return fire." Maya watched the drone's movement patterns, noting the rhythm and flow of its aerial dance. Beautiful, yes, but not random. There was logic to its movements, patterns that could be learned and predicted. "Lord Zarkos, you may begin." The Korathian's miniature star weapon charged with a sound like thunder, unleashing a beam of coherent plasma that could have cut through a starship's hull. The drone's shields flared brilliant white, absorbing the energy, and, within seconds Maya could see the defensive matrix adapting, becoming more efficient at dispersing plasma-based attacks. The drone retaliated with precision energy bolts that sent Zarkos diving for cover behind his platform's shield barriers. One by one, the students unleashed their creations. Particle beams, gravitational lenses, antimatter containment failures turned into weapons, even exotic weapons that manipulated spacetime itself. Each attack was absorbed, analyzed, and added to the drone's defensive protocols. Each student was subsequently driven to cover by precise return fire. The Vuldran team's kinetic accelerator achieved partial success, actually causing the drone's shields to flicker momentarily before the defensive systems adapted to kinetic threats. But even that partial victory ended with all three team members scrambling for shelter as the drone's response nearly overloaded their platform's defensive systems. 23 students had tried and failed. The drone hung in the center of the chamber, its surface now displaying a constantly shifting array of defensive patterns. It had learned to counter every form of advanced weaponry the galaxy's finest military engineering students could devise. Miss Chen, Instructor Vexai called, his voice dripping with anticipation. "You are the final student. Please, demonstrate this bow of yours." Maya stepped forward to the edge of her platform, bow in hand, a single arrow nocked and ready. The chamber fell silent except for the low hum of the drone's defensive systems. She drew the bowstring back to her cheek, feeling the familiar tension, the balance point she'd learned in those mountain summers with her grandfather. The drone sensors focused on her, analyzing, categorizing, trying to understand what type of threat she represented. Maya released. The arrow flew true and straight, a simple piece of sharpened metal guided by nothing more complex than physics and human skill. The drone sensors tracked it, analyzed its composition, calculated its trajectory. Just a primitive projectile. No energy signature. No exotic materials. No threat that required advanced countermeasures. The arrow punched through the drone's adaptive shields as if they didn't exist, struck the central processing core, and sent the entire mechanical marvel tumbling to the chamber floor in a shower of sparks. The silence that followed was absolute. Maya lowered her bow and looked up at Instructor Vexai. Sometimes the old ways work best. The instructor's serpentine form remained motionless for a long moment, his yellow eyes fixed on the sparking remains of his supposedly invincible training drone. Around the chamber, 23 of the galaxy's most elite military engineering students stared in shock at the small human who had just accomplished the impossible. Finally, Vexai found his voice. "How?" "The shields were designed to adapt to energy weapons and exotic technologies," Maya explained calmly. "They analyze threats based on energy signatures, quantum resonance patterns, and gravitational distortions. A simple kinetic projectile with no advanced technology wasn't something they knew how to categorize or counter." "But humans are supposed to be primitive," stammered Zarkos. "This should not be possible." Maya smiled. "We're not primitive. We're experienced. There's a difference." As she stepped down from her platform, Keflon was the first to approach. "Your grandfather," he said quietly. "He taught you this weapon?" "Among other things. He believed that just because something is old doesn't mean it's obsolete. Sometimes the simplest solution is the best solution." Instructor Vexai finally moved, slithering down to examine the remains of his drone. The arrow had punched completely through the central core, creating a hole that spoke of devastating precision. "The assignment was to create a weapon capable of neutralizing the target," he said slowly. "You have exceeded parameters." Maya nodded respectfully. "Thank you, sir." "Do not thank me yet," Vexai continued, his voice carrying an odd note Maya couldn't quite identify. "Word of this will spread. The other instructors will hear that a human has accomplished what no other student could manage. They will take notice." There was warning in his tone, but Maya simply nodded again. She'd come to the academy to prove that humanity belonged in the Federation, not as a junior partner or charity case, but as equals. Today's demonstration was just the beginning. Word of Maya's impossible victory spread through the academy like wildfire. Within hours, holographic recordings of the moment her arrow pierced the impenetrable training drone were circulating through every dormitory, classroom, and instructor's lounge. Students gathered in small groups, replaying the footage and debating what they had witnessed. Maya walked through the corridors the next morning acutely aware of the stares and whispers that followed her. Some students looked at her with newfound respect, others with confusion, and a few with something that might have been fear. The small human who had been easy to overlook was now impossible to ignore. "Shun!" The voice boomed across the academy's main plaza, causing conversations to halt and heads to turn. Admiral Corventhal approached, his massive Vuldran frame cutting through clusters of students like a battleship through debris. As the Academy's Director of Military Applications, his word carried weight that could make or break careers before they began. Maya stood at attention as the Admiral drew near. His purple skin bore more honor scars than she'd ever seen on a single individual, each one representing a victory in personal combat. His forearms moved with the controlled precision of a career warrior, and his small black eyes held the kind of intensity that could strip paint from bulkheads. "Sir," Maya acknowledged, maintaining perfect military bearing despite being less than half the Admiral's height. "Walk with me," he commanded, turning toward the Academy's administrative sector. Maya fell into step beside him, acutely aware that every student and instructor they passed was watching their interaction with keen interest. They walked in silence through corridors lined with holographic displays showing the Federation's greatest military victories. Battles against the Void Swarm. The pacification of the Crimson Nebula pirates. The defense of the core worlds against the machine uprising of the Synthetic Collective. Heroes from a dozen species, wielding weapons that could crack planets and shields that could stop stars. Admiral Corventhal led her to his private office, a vast space dominated by windows overlooking the Academy's training grounds. Real-time holographic displays showed current exercises, students practicing with weapons that existed at the very edge of physical possibility. "Sit," the Admiral commanded, gesturing to a chair that adjusted automatically to accommodate Maya's smaller frame. He moved to stand before the windows, hands clasped behind his back in a pose she'd seen him take before delivering particularly difficult lectures. "Do you understand what you accomplished yesterday?" he asked without turning around. "I neutralized Instructor Vexhi's training drone, sir." "You did more than that." Admiral Corventhal turned to face her, his intense gaze fixed on her eyes. "That drone was built using technology salvaged from Void Swarm hunter-killers. Its adaptive shielding had been tested against every known weapon system in Federation space. Military contractors spent years trying to develop countermeasures." Maya remained silent, sensing there was more. "You defeated it with a stick and string," the Admiral continued. "Do you have any idea what that means? That sometimes simple solutions work when complex ones fail?" Admiral Corventhal's laugh was like controlled thunder. Spoken like a true human. "Yes, that is precisely what it means. And that, Miss Chen, is why you are now a problem." Maya felt her stomach drop. "Sir?" "Not for me," the Admiral clarified quickly. "For them. The weapons manufacturers who spend fortunes developing countermeasures that don't work. The military theorists whose doctrines are based on technological supremacy. The Federation Council members who believe that advancement always means more complexity, more energy, more cost." He moved to his desk, activating a holographic display that showed what appeared to be military budget allocations. The numbers were staggering: billions of credits spent on weapons development, research, and procurement. "Your little demonstration yesterday just proved that a 10-credit piece of shaped wood can defeat billion-credit defensive systems," Admiral Corventhal said. "There are people in very high places who find that disturbing." Maya studied the budget displays, beginning to understand the implications. "They think if word gets out, it might change how the military approaches weapons development?" "They think," the Admiral corrected, "that if every species starts looking backward instead of forward, the entire military-industrial complex that drives Federation defense policy might become obsolete overnight. And they are not wrong to think so." He waved his hand, and the display changed to show historical data. Human military development over the past century since first contact. The rapid adoption of energy weapons, gravitational manipulation, exotic matter applications. Humanity's traditional weapon systems relegated to museums and ceremonial functions. Your people abandoned your ancestral weapons very quickly once you joined the Federation, Admiral Corventhal observed. Bows, swords, gunpowder projectiles all replaced with plasma rifles and particle beams within a single generation. Why do you still know the old ways? Maya thought of her grandfather, teaching her to shape wood and string arrows in the mountains of Colorado while the rest of humanity reached for the stars. My grandfather believed that progress meant adding to what you know, not replacing it. He said that every skill humans had ever learned was part of our heritage, and that heritage made us who we are. Wise man. What else did he teach you? The question seemed casual, but Maya sensed weight behind it. Tracking. Hunting. Traditional crafts. He said that understanding how to make things with your hands helped you understand how anything works. And combat? Maya hesitated. Some. He had military experience. From before the Federation. Admiral Corventhal nodded slowly. I see. Miss Chen, I am going to share something with you that is not widely known outside the highest levels of command. The Federation faces challenges that require more than technological solutions. Problems where our advanced weapons and shields are ineffective or counterproductive. He activated a new display, this one marked with security classifications Maya had never seen before. Images of space sectors marked in red, incident reports, casualty lists. The Void Swarm has been adapting faster than our weapons technology can advance. Every new weapon system we deploy is analyzed and countered within months. Our military doctrine is based on technological superiority, but what happens when the enemy learns to turn that technology against us? Maya studied the classified data, her mind racing. You think primitive weapons might be effective where advanced ones aren't? I think, the Admiral said carefully, that yesterday you proved something important. That there is value in approaches the enemy cannot predict or understand. The Void Swarm's adaptive systems are designed to counter known technologies. They have never encountered bows. The implications hit Maya like a physical blow. You want to weaponize traditional human combat techniques. I want to explore possibilities that others are too proud or too narrow-minded to consider. Admiral Corventhal moved back to the window, watching students below practice with weapons that cost more than small starships. The Federation's member species have their own traditional weapons, abandoned in favor of standard-issue energy weapons. The Corathians once used crystal-edged blades that could cut through any material. The Nexari developed projectile weapons with guidance systems that made every shot perfect. The Sethrak. He paused, well, they were weapons. And, you think bringing back traditional weapons could give us an advantage? I think diversity of approach is a tactical asset we have foolishly discarded. The Admiral turned back to Maya. Which brings us to your new assignment. Maya straightened in her chair. Sir? You are being transferred to a special research division. Your official classification will be Advanced Weapons Analyst, but your actual mission will be to explore traditional combat applications from all Federation species. You will have unlimited access to historical databases, traditional craftsmen, and certain classified resources. What kind of classified resources? Admiral Corventhal smiled, and, for the first time since entering his office, Maya saw warmth in his expression. The kind that might include actual combat testing against captured Void Swarm technology. Maya's heart raced. This was beyond anything she had imagined when she first picked up a piece of wood analog in Instructor Vexai's class. Who else will be working on this project? That depends on how successful your initial efforts are. For now, you will work alone, with regular reports to me. If your research proves promising, we will expand the team. The Admiral moved to his desk and pulled up an authorization form. This assignment comes with significant discretion and equally significant responsibility. You will have access to technologies and information that could reshape Federation military doctrine. You will also face opposition from individuals who prefer the current system. Opposition? There are instructors and administrators who believe your success yesterday was a fluke. They will attempt to prove that traditional weapons are inferior to modern systems. They will try to demonstrate that your approach is impractical for real military applications. Maya thought about Instructor Vexai's reaction, the warning in his voice about word spreading. They want me to fail. Some do. Others simply cannot accept that something they discarded might still have value. Admiral Corventhal handed her the authorization pad. Your decision, Miss Chen. Continue with standard coursework and graduate as another Federation officer with standard Federation training, or take on a project that could change everything. Maya looked at the pad, thinking of her grandfather's lessons about heritage and progress. About adding to knowledge instead of replacing it. About the value of understanding how things worked at the most fundamental level. She pressed her thumb to the authorization scanner. Excellent. Admiral Corventhal's smile widened. Your new laboratory is in Research Wing 7. You will find it adequately equipped. Your first assignment is to develop a comprehensive analysis of traditional Corathian bladework. Zarkos has been assigned to assist you. The student from yesterday's class? But, he seemed dismissive of traditional weapons. Zarkos is the heir to the Warbird noble houses. His family maintains one of the galaxy's finest collections of pre-Federation Corathian weapons. He has also never lost a personal combat challenge, and his academic performance is exemplary. If you can convince him that traditional weapons have merit, others will follow. Maya nodded, understanding the political implications. And if I can't convince him? Then, your project will likely be terminated, and you will return to standard coursework with a note in your file about promising but impractical research initiatives. The message was clear. This was her chance to prove that humanity's contribution to the Federation went beyond technological adaptation and resource extraction. But it was also a test that could end her military career before it truly began. When do I start? Immediately. Your personal effects are being transferred to new quarters appropriate to your classification level. Zarkos is waiting for you in Laboratory 7. Maya stood, coming to attention. Thank you for this opportunity, Admiral. Do not thank me yet, Admiral Corventhal said, echoing Instructor Vexhi's warning from the day before. Prove that I was right to take this risk. Show me that your grandfather's wisdom can help save the Federation. As Maya left the Admiral's office, her mind raced with possibilities and challenges ahead. She was no longer just a student trying to prove humanity belonged in the Academy. She was now responsible for potentially revolutionizing Federation military doctrine. And her first test would be convincing a proud Korathian noble that there was value in weapons his people had abandoned centuries ago. Maya made her way through the corridors toward Research Wing 7, passing the same students who had watched her victory the day before. But now their stares carried different weight. They weren't just looking at the small human who had surprised everyone. They were looking at someone who might change everything. Laboratory 7 was unlike anything Maya had expected. The space stretched across an entire floor of Research Wing 7, with workstations equipped for every conceivable type of materials analysis and fabrication. Advanced holographic projectors could display weapons in 3 dimensions with molecular-level detail. Testing chambers with programmable gravity, atmosphere, and electromagnetic conditions. Access to the Academy's complete historical database, including classified archives from before Federation contact. And, standing in the center of it all, examining a holographic display with obvious displeasure, was Zarkos. The Korathian noble turned as Maya entered, his red-crested head tilting in the predatory gesture she'd seen the day before. So, the human arrives to teach me about weapons my ancestors perfected while your species was discovering fire. Maya set down her personal items and approached the central workstation where Zarkos had been working. The holographic display showed a magnificent sword, curved blade gleaming like captured starlight, crossguard formed from some kind of living crystal that seemed to pulse with inner light. Beautiful, Maya said honestly. Is this from your family's collection? The blade of House Warwind, Zarkos confirmed, his voice carrying grudging pride. Forged 3,000 years ago from crystallized stellar matter. The edge can cut through any known material, and the crystal core channels the wielder's bioelectric field to enhance speed and precision. Maya studied the weapon's design, noting the elegant balance between form and function. Why did your people stop using these? Because particle beams are more efficient. Zarkos gestured dismissively. Why risk close combat when you can kill at range? Why craft individual weapons when you can mass-produce energy projectors? Why maintain skills that require decades to master when any soldier can learn to aim and fire in weeks? Those are good reasons, Maya acknowledged. But, yesterday you saw what happened when advanced technology met something it wasn't designed to counter. Zarkos's four-fingered hand clenched into a fist. Your arrow struck a training drone. That is hardly equivalent to real combat conditions. No, Maya agreed. It's not. But, it proved a principle that might apply to real combat. She moved to the materials fabricator. Would you be willing to help me test that principle? How? Maya began entering specifications into the fabricator. By recreating this blade and testing it against modern defensive systems. See if something designed to cut through any known material can defeat shields designed to stop particle beams. Zarkos watched as Maya's request processed. The materials list was extensive exotic alloys, crystalline matrices, even a small amount of stabilized stellar matter. You cannot simply fabricate a Korathian blade. The forging process requires specific techniques, ritual preparations, understanding of the crystal bonding principles. Then, teach me. The Korathian stared at her for a long moment. You would learn traditional bladesmithing? A human? I learned traditional archery from my grandfather. Same principle, understanding how things work at the most fundamental level. Maya met his gaze steadily. Unless you think I'm incapable of learning? Zarkos's head tilted further, and Maya caught a glimpse of what might have been respect in his large eyes. The forging of a true Korathian blade takes months of preparation and years of training to master. Then, we'll start with something simpler and work our way up. Maya pulled up the historical database, accessing pre-Federation Korathian military records. Show me the most basic blade your warriors used. Something a young soldier might carry. Reluctantly, Zarkos modified the holographic display. The magnificent ceremonial sword was replaced by something more utilitarian, still elegant, but clearly designed for combat rather than display. The crystal core was smaller, the stellar matter content minimal, the overall design focused on reliability and effectiveness. A fledgling's blade, Zarkos said with obvious distaste. Given to warriors who had not yet proven themselves worthy of true weapons. Perfect. Can you teach me to make this? Zarkos considered for a long moment, his predatory instincts warring with what appeared to be curiosity about the unusual human. Finally, he moved to the fabricator controls. Very well. But, you will do this properly. If we are to desecrate my ancestors' crafts with clumsy human hands, at least we will observe proper techniques. For the next 6 hours, Maya learned that Korathian bladesmithing was less about technology and more about art. The crystal cores weren't simply inserted into the blade, they had to be grown within the metal matrix during forging, guided by precise manipulation of temperature, electromagnetic fields, and even the smith's own bioelectric output. Your nervous system is completely wrong, Zarkos observed as Maya's 15th attempt to achieve proper crystal resonance failed. Korathian bioelectric patterns are structured for this work. Humans generate random electrical noise. Maya wiped sweat from her forehead, studying the partially formed blade cooling in the fabricator chamber. The metal work was perfect, her grandfather's lessons in traditional smithing had translated well to exotic materials. But, the crystal integration remained elusive. What if we approached it differently, she suggested. Instead of trying to mimic Korathian bioelectric patterns, what if we found a way to make human patterns work? Impossible. The crystal resonance frequencies are genetically determined. 3,000 years of Korathian evolution shaped our nervous systems for this purpose. Maya activated the laboratory's analysis systems, running detailed scans of the failed crystal formations. But, crystals respond to any properly structured electromagnetic field, right? It doesn't have to be biological. Zarkos moved closer to examine the scan results. You are suggesting technological assistance. That defeats the purpose of traditional methods. Does it? My bow didn't have any electronics, but I used modern materials with precisely calculated properties. We're not trying to recreate the past exactly, we're trying to understand what made traditional weapons effective and apply those principles with current capabilities. For the first time since Maya had known him, Zarkos appeared thoughtful rather than dismissive. You would modify the traditional techniques rather than abandon them? I would adapt them. Same way your ancestors probably adapted earlier techniques when they first discovered crystal forging. Zarkos was quiet for several minutes, studying the scan data with growing interest. There are harmonic frequencies that could substitute for bioelectric resonance, he admitted finally. We would need to generate them artificially during the forging process. Can the laboratory equipment do that? Possibly. But, it would require precise timing, exact frequency modulation. Zarkos trailed off, his large eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the failed crystal structure. What is it? This pattern. The way your human bioelectric field disrupted the crystal formation. It created harmonics I have never seen before. Zarkos manipulated the display, highlighting specific areas where Maya's electrical interference had affected the growing crystal. These resonance nodes, they should not exist. But, they are stronger than normal crystal matrix. Maya leaned closer, studying the unexpected formations. Stronger how? More efficient energy transfer. Greater structural integrity. If this pattern could be reproduced intentionally. Zarkos straightened, his crest feathers rising in what Maya had learned was a sign of excitement among Korathians. We must attempt this again. The next attempt took 12 hours. Working together, they modified the forging process to incorporate both traditional Korathian techniques and Maya's human bioelectric patterns. Instead of fighting the interference, they learned to guide and focus it, creating crystal formations that combined the best elements of both approaches. The result was extraordinary. The blade that emerged from the fabricator looked like traditional Korathian craftsmanship, but the crystal core pulsed with patterns neither of them had seen before. When Maya held the weapon, the crystal responded to her bioelectric field with perfect resonance, enhancing her reflexes and providing feedback about balance and movement. "Impossible," Zarkos whispered, running his hands along the blade's surface. "The crystal should reject human nervous system patterns completely." Maya tested the weapon's balance, feeling the crystal's guidance as naturally as if she'd been born with Korathian genetics. Maybe it's not rejecting them. Maybe it's learning to work with them. That would require adaptive capabilities that standard battle crystals do not possess. Maya activated the laboratory's testing chamber, setting up targets with varying armor configurations. Only one way to find out. The first target was standard Federation combat armor, layered composites designed to stop small arms fire and disperse energy weapon impacts. Maya approached with the hybrid blade, feeling the crystal's guidance as she found the optimal striking angle. The blade passed through the armor as if it were paper. The second target included personal shielding energy barriers designed to deflect particle beams and plasma bolts. Maya struck experimentally, not expecting penetration. The crystal-guided blade sliced through the shield matrix and the armor beneath it in a single stroke. Zarkos stared at the destroyed targets in shock. These defensive systems are rated against weapons that can crack starship hulls. How? Maya examined the blade, noting how the crystal patterns had shifted during combat, adapting to each defensive system they encountered. "I think your ancestors built something even more sophisticated than they realized. These crystals don't just channel energy, they learn." Adaptive crystals were theoretical concepts. The technology to create them. Maybe the technology wasn't technological, Maya suggested. Maybe it was biological. Maybe that's why traditional forging required Korathian bioelectric patterns, not just to shape the crystal, but to teach it. Zarkos moved to the testing chamber, examining the severed targets with growing amazement. If this is true, if these weapons can adapt to counter modern defenses, then we might have found something that can work against the Void Swarm's adaptive systems. Maya cleaned the blade, watching the crystal patterns settle back into their dormant configuration. Something they can't learn to counter because it learns to counter them. The implications were staggering. Traditional weapons that could adapt and evolve in real time. Combat systems that learned from their wielders and grew more effective with use. A fusion of ancient wisdom and human innovation that created something entirely new. Zarkos was the first to break the silence. "We must test this against actual Void Swarm technology. If these principles work." "If they work," Maya agreed, "we might have just changed the course of the war." They stood together in the laboratory, human and Korathian, looking at a weapon that represented something unprecedented in Federation history. Not just technological advancement, but cultural synthesis. The combination of traditional knowledge and innovative thinking that could only come from species working together instead of abandoning their heritage. Maya thought of her grandfather's lessons about progress meaning addition rather than replacement. About the value of understanding how things worked at the deepest level. Looking at the adaptive blade in her hands, she realized they had just proven his point in the most spectacular way possible. The message from Admiral Corventhal arrived at 0347 station time, marked with the highest priority classifications Maya had ever seen. She and Zarkos had been working for 18 straight hours, refining the adaptive blade design and documenting their breakthrough, when the holographic alert materialized above their workstation. "Report to Hangar Bay 7 immediately. Bring all research materials and prototypes. Combat authorization granted." Maya looked at Zarkos, seeing her own mixture of excitement and apprehension reflected in his large eyes. Combat authorization meant they wouldn't be testing their hybrid weapons against training drones or simulation programs. They would be testing them against actual Void Swarm technology. Hangar Bay 7 was unlike the Academy's standard facilities. Instead of training shuttles and atmospheric fighters, it housed military vessels that belonged to active Federation fleets. Maya recognized interceptor designs, stealth reconnaissance craft, and, in the center of the bay, something that made her breath catch. A captured Void Swarm hunter-killer. The alien vessel looked like crystallized darkness, organic curves that seemed to absorb light, surfaces that shifted and flowed even while the ship remained motionless. It was beautiful and terrifying, representing technology that the Federation's finest scientists still couldn't fully understand. Admiral Corventhal stood beside the captured ship, deep in conversation with figures Maya didn't recognize. As she and Zarkos approached, she caught fragments of their discussion. Confirmed reports of adaptive countermeasures against plasma artillery. 3 battle groups lost in the Outer Rim sector. Conventional weapons proving completely ineffective. The Admiral noticed their arrival and gestured for them to approach. Miss Chen, Lord Zarkos. I trust you have results to report? Maya held up the case containing their hybrid blade. We do, sir. But I'm not sure we understand the full implications yet. Show me. Maya opened the case, revealing the weapon they had spent the past day perfecting. In the hangar's harsh lighting, the crystal core seemed to pulse with its own inner life, patterns shifting in response to her proximity. One of the unknown figures, a tall Nexari with elaborate tactical implants, leaned forward to examine the blade. This is Korathian craftsmanship, but the crystal formations are unusual. They're adaptive, Zarkos explained. The weapon learns from its wielder's bioelectric patterns and adjusts its capabilities in real time. Impossible, declared another figure, this one a Sethrak whose scales bore the geometric scarring of the engineer cast. Adaptive crystalline matrices require quantum-level control systems. Traditional forging methods cannot achieve such precision. Maya removed the blade from its case, immediately feeling the crystal's response to her nervous system. Traditional methods combined with human bioelectric interference patterns. We're not replacing traditional techniques, we're enhancing them. Admiral Corventhal activated a holographic display showing recent battle reports from the front lines. Ships destroyed, planets evacuated, entire sectors falling to void swarm adaptive technology. The situation has deteriorated rapidly over the past 72 hours. Every weapon system we deploy is countered within days. We need solutions that work outside conventional parameters. The Nexari tactical specialist manipulated the display, showing detailed analysis of void swarm adaptive systems. Their learning algorithms are based on energy patterns and technological signatures. They analyze, categorize, and develop countermeasures with frightening efficiency. But they've never encountered weapons that learn back, Maya realized. Precisely. Admiral Corventhal gestured toward the captured hunter-killer. This vessel has been modified for controlled testing. Its weapon systems are active but constrained to non-lethal parameters. Its defensive systems are fully operational and will adapt to any threat you present. Maya stared at the alien ship, understanding the magnitude of what they were being asked to do. Not test their theories against simulations or training equipment, but against actual enemy technology that had been destroying Federation fleets. What exactly are you expecting us to accomplish? Zarkos asked, his crest feathers rising in what Maya had learned indicated either excitement or stress. Prove that your hybrid approach can penetrate void swarm defenses, the Admiral replied. If successful, we will immediately begin development of similar weapons for frontline deployment. And if we fail? Then, the Federation continues to lose this war while we search for alternative solutions. Maya felt the weight of expectation settling on her shoulders. 3 days ago, she had been a student trying to pass a weapons engineering class. Now she was potentially responsible for turning the tide of an interstellar war. When do we begin? Now. The testing chamber was a sealed section of the hangar bay, heavily shielded and monitored by every sensor array the Academy possessed. The captured void swarm vessel hung in the center of the space, its dark surfaces rippling with anticipation. Weapon ports opened along its hull, revealing biomechanical cannons that seemed to grow from the ship's living structure. Maya stood at one end of the chamber, hybrid blade in hand, while Zarkos took position with a traditional Korathian weapon for comparison. The plan was simple: engage the hunter-killer's defensive systems with conventional weapons first, allowing them to adapt, then test whether the hybrid blade could overcome those adaptations. Initiating test sequence, announced the Academy's senior testing coordinator, a Vuldran engineer whose purple skin showed the ritual scars of technical mastery. Lord Zarkos, you may begin. Zarkos drew his family blade, a magnificent weapon that had been in House Warwind for generations. The crystal core flared to life, responding to his Korathian bioelectric field with perfect resonance. He moved across the chamber with deadly grace, closing distance to the alien vessel at incredible speed. The hunter-killer's defensive systems activated immediately. Energy barriers flared around the ship, weapons tracked Zarkos's approach, and Maya could see the adaptation algorithms analyzing his blade's energy signature. When he struck, the crystal-enhanced weapon carved deep into the ship's hull before the defenses could fully respond. But they did respond. Within seconds, the energy barriers had modified their frequency to repel crystal-based weapons. Electromagnetic countermeasures disrupted the blade's bioelectric enhancement systems. When Zarkos struck again, his weapon skittered harmlessly off adaptive armor plating. Defensive adaptation complete, reported the testing coordinator. Traditional Korathian blade no longer effective against target systems. Maya stepped forward, feeling her hybrid weapon respond to the proximity of the alien technology. The crystal patterns were shifting, analyzing, preparing for something the ship's systems had never encountered before. She engaged the hunter-killer at close range, bringing her blade against the same defensive systems that had just adapted to neutralize Zarkos's weapon. But, instead of being repelled, her blade sliced through the energy barriers as if they didn't exist. The ship's adaptive algorithms went into overdrive, analyzing the new threat, trying to categorize and counter it. But every adaptation they made was matched by counter-adaptations from Maya's weapon. The crystal core learned from the ship's defensive responses, evolving its own capabilities in real time. Impossible, whispered the Sethrak engineer, watching readouts that showed both weapon and target systems adapting and counter-adapting in an endless cycle. The defensive systems cannot achieve stability against this weapon. Maya continued her attack, feeling the blade guide her movements as it learned the hunter-killer's vulnerabilities. Each strike was more precise than the last, exploiting weaknesses that the weapon discovered and exploited faster than the ship systems could compensate. When she finally stepped back, the alien vessel's defensive systems were cycling through adaptation sequences so rapidly that they had become effectively useless. Energy barriers flickered chaotically, weapons systems fired random bursts at empty air, and the ship's biomechanical hull showed extensive damage from strikes that should have been impossible to deliver. The silence in the observation deck was absolute. "Run the sequence again," Admiral Corventhal ordered. "I want to be certain." They ran the test 6 more times with identical results. Traditional weapons were adapted to and neutralized within minutes. The hybrid blade not only penetrated void swarm defenses but actively prevented those defenses from stabilizing, creating a continuous state of tactical confusion that left the enemy vessel effectively helpless. "This changes everything," the Nexari tactical specialist said finally. "If these principles can be applied to other traditional weapons." "They can," Maya confirmed. "We've identified the fundamental principles. Any weapon system that incorporates learning crystals with multi-species bioelectric patterns should achieve similar results." Admiral Corventhal activated his command interface, sending priority communications to every military installation in Federation space. "Miss Chen, Lord Zarkos, you have just provided the Federation with its first effective counter to void swarm adaptive technology. I am authorizing immediate production of hybrid weapons for all frontline forces." Maya felt a surge of pride mixed with overwhelming responsibility. "How long will it take to implement?" "Traditional weapons can be produced and distributed within weeks. Enhanced crystal matrices will require months. But even basic implementation should give our forces a significant advantage." Zarkos examined his family blade, understanding dawning in his large eyes. Every species in the Federation has traditional weapons that were abandoned for energy-based systems. If Maya's approach can be applied universally, then we will have an army equipped with weapons the enemy cannot predict, understand, or counter, Admiral Corventhal finished. Weapons that learn and adapt faster than even void swarm technology. The implications were staggering. Not just victory in the current war, but a fundamental shift in how the Federation approached military technology. Instead of constantly pursuing more advanced weapons, they would revive and enhance traditional approaches that had proven effective for millennia. Maya thought of her grandfather's lessons about heritage and progress, about adding to knowledge rather than replacing it. About understanding how things worked at the most fundamental level. "There's something else," she said quietly, drawing everyone's attention. "This approach doesn't just apply to weapons. If we can create adaptive crystals that learn from bioelectric patterns, we can enhance anything. Tools as vehicles, even starships could be designed to learn from their operators." The senior officers exchanged glances loaded with possibility and concern. Adaptive technology that learned from its users could revolutionize every aspect of Federation society. But it could also create dependencies and vulnerabilities that didn't exist with conventional systems. One step at a time, Admiral Corventhal decided. First, we win this war. Then, we consider the broader applications. As the meeting concluded and the various officials departed to implement the new weapons program, Maya found herself alone with Zarkos beside the captured hunter-killer. The alien vessel hung motionless, its adaptive systems still cycling through failed countermeasure sequences. Your grandfather, Zarkos said thoughtfully. He would be proud. Maya nodded, feeling the weight of the hybrid blade in her hands. He always said that the old ways and new ways weren't opposites. They were partners. Perhaps this is what the Federation was meant to become, Zarkos suggested. Not a collection of species abandoning their heritage for common technology, but a synthesis that makes all of us stronger. Maya looked around the hangar bay, imagining Federation fleets armed with hybrid weapons that combined the wisdom of ages with the innovation of cooperation. Korathian adaptive blades guided by human bioelectric patterns. Nexari precision projectiles enhanced with Vuldran strength amplifiers. Sethrak biomechanical systems learning from the tactical insights of a dozen species. For the first time since joining the Academy, Maya felt that humanity had truly found its place in the Federation. Not as junior partners struggling to catch up, but as contributors to something greater than any single species could achieve alone. The old ways and new ways, working together to build a future none of them could have imagined separately. Maya smiled, thinking of her grandfather's words echoing across the stars, progress means adding to what you know, not replacing it. The Federation was about to discover just how profound that truth could be.